Hello, Garland Nixon here, hanging out with Larry Johnson on a Thursday afternoon.
Yeah.
Plenty to talk about. Let's talk. Hello, Garland here, hanging out with Larry Johnson. And just so I can remind everyone, Larry has a great website, and I go there like every day just to see if there's a new article up. You can see there's some good articles here. Is Trump's tariff tirade a Pyrrhic victory? Why is the U.S. intelligence providing bogus numbers of dead soldiers? 12 days, then what? He's got guest contributors here. A lot of good stuff here. But today, we're going to hit on, if I can ever figure out what the heck I'm doing. Today, we're going to hit on a very interesting and pertinent article as we run down the Donald Trump's 10 days, 50 days, 12 days, however many hell days it is. We need to talk to Larry to find out if we can make some sense of that. Is Trump's tariff tirade a Pyrrhic victory? And, the question is it even a victory at all? You can find this at sonar21.com. Larry.
Thanks, man. Hey, good shirt.
Thank you.
You're styling.
I'm inspired. My wardrobe has been inspired, Larry.
There's a graph. I published two images of two charts in the article. The first one shows, go all the way down. The first one will show that in the year 2000, the United States was the majority trading partner. Those right there. So look at that. That's the year 2000. The United States was a majority trading partner of most of the world. We did more trade with Russia than China did. We did more trade with all of South America than China did. We did more trade with most of Africa, with India, with Australia. Got the picture. Now, 24 years later, go to the next chart.
Wow.
Complete reversal. Now, China is the largest trading partner of most of the world. And you say, well, what does this have to do with tariffs? You know what? If Donald Trump had been president in 2000 and put this tariff program in effect then, it would have worked because most of these other countries were dependent in some form or fashion. We had some real leverage on the trade side. Not anymore. So, we put those tariffs on China. And what did China do? It immediately, like, for example, we used to send billions of dollars in pork and soybeans to China. And, it's not like we've got a monopoly on, pigs and soybeans, but, that was China was buying from us. Now, since these tariffs have been instituted, that trade has gone to zero.
Wow. No more pork, no more soybeans. You go, well, geez, where are the Chinese getting it? They're buying from Brazil. They're buying from Russia. That's the problem with Trump's tariffs. He thinks we got leverage where we don't. And in fact, with China has rare earth minerals and these magnets that are essential components for electric vehicles, as well as smartphones, as well as military explosives. And the minute Trump put those tariffs on China, they said, we got some production delays. So all of a sudden, the United States was cut off. And a bunch of panicked executives at Lockheed Martin, General Dynamics, Raytheon went rushing to the White House and said, what the hell are you doing? You got to get this back on. So, you got Trump had to back off. And you notice now they keep threatening, we're going to really sanction China. We're putting it off for another 90 days. So 3 more months. So August, September, October. So Trump's just making it up as he goes along. And
what he's discovered. He claims, like the other day, oh, we got this $600 billion deal with the EU. Well, it turns out Ursula von der Leyen, fond of lying, von der Leyen, she had no authority to make that deal. She doesn't have like the money that she can sit down and write a check out to the United States. She does, she has no. So she just agreed. It'd be like me sitting down with somebody, with my neighbor, and say, "Hey, I'll sell you Garland Nixon's house."
Exactly.
Hey, give me the money. But you're going to go. Wait a second. You don't have power of attorney. In fact, we don't even have a legal relationship. So, you just made a commitment that you can't fulfill. So that's what happened with von der Leyen. The South Koreans, the White House put on a big show Friday night. I think it was Friday, claiming, oh man, look at the deal that we just cut with, I guess it was last night. Look at the deal we just cut with South Korea. Well, I heard from somebody who had actually met with one of the members of the South Korean delegation. They are pissed off at Trump and at America. In fact, they're saying, you know what? We're beginning to look at China as a better alternative for economic relations. One, they're in the neighborhood. Two, they treat us with respect. They don't treat us like we're some, slave, field hand. And that's exactly what Trump is doing. Look, he's threatening all the allies. If he's threatening Canada, France, and the UK, because they're going to recognize Palestine as a state. And so he's threatening to cut off trade with them over there. I mean, it's just, it's stupid. But, that's what, Trump is. I really think there's something mentally wrong with the man. A normal person wouldn't act like this.
You're right. It's very rational. To start with the so-called von der Leyen deal, right? Everybody's like, oh, Trump, he totally fleeced Europe. Well, on paper, he fleeced them. Right. And von der Leyen, bent the knee to him and fluffed him up and told him how great he was and all that stuff. Okay, fine. In reality, we don't even have we don't sell $750 billion worth of fuel. So he's going to, more than we sell the entire world now, we're going to sell to Europe, and they don't buy that much.
Yeah.
And she's promised them $600 billion. Oh, really? Does that come from the governments of Europe? No. And if it did, she couldn't do it. And she's saying, well, it's going to come from the corporations. But because of the price of fuel that they've already increased of energy from cutting themselves off from Russian fuel, they're getting deindustrialized. They're moving out of Europe. They don't have the money. And it's like what Trump does is he struts around. He makes a big announcement. He has a big public relations thing. He's done it again. He's fleeced Europe. It's $1 billion. Remember this? He's gone to the UAE or whatever, and he's got $4 trillion coming from and I'm like, they're not giving you trillion. They're not going to give you their entire sovereign wealth fund. Ain't happening. But that was a big deal. They gave him some old beat up plane that has to be redone, the Flying Castle or whatever. And he leaves there talking about all the trillions of dollars he's getting. And now everybody has forgotten it because we're not going to get a dime.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Well, and look, he insists, hey, we got to be able to sell cars to England and Japan. Only one little problem. That means you got to retool the automobile industry to produce the steering wheel on the right side of the car as opposed to the left side of the car. I mean, and that takes some capital investment. And, I'm not aware of a single domestic, of a Ford. We could sell Ford pickup trucks, but again, they don't fit in well in Japan or England because the roads are pretty narrow. And so some of like the Ford F-150, Yeah, I mean, you might as well be driving an army truck around over there. So,
and the cars are like this big because
yeah,
they sell gas by the liter, and it ends up being like $6 or $7 a gallon. So when the cars are all like the size of one of those smart cars. So
yeah, yeah. So it's just this is not there's not a thoughtful strategy here. In other words, they didn't sit down and say, okay, where do we want to go? What do we want to achieve? How do we? So we want to return industry to the United States. Hey, I'm all in favor of that. I want to let's restore some of those industrial jobs that I don't know about in your case, but I know in my case, my dad was a steel worker, and
my dad was a longshoreman.
Yeah,
same kind of thing. Hard hat guy wearing guys.
Yeah, and when I talked to someone, I went back for our 50th high school reunion 2 years ago, and talked to and talking to a bunch of my buddies, we recognized that every one of us, when we were in high school, our fathers were working class guys.
Yeah.
They worked in factories. They worked at Standard Oil. They worked at the Bendix plant. They worked at General Motors at Leeds. They worked at a Ford plant. They were working at Allis-Chalmers, which made farm equipment. They were making and doing something. We had an industrial base. Yeah.
Baltimore had Bethlehem Steel. We had a steel mill. A lot of people work. A lot of my dad's friends, they just called it. It was called Sparrows Point Steel Mill.
Yeah.
And around Baltimore, he worked at the Point.
Yeah.
They worked at the Point, and they had benefits. They had a retirement, everything.
Yeah, and that's gone now. I mean, I know in my hometown, Independence, Missouri, it's gone, and it's gone in it's gone in Baltimore too. If the HBO series The Wire did a great job of sort of showing that backstory of how Baltimore was collapsing inward with just as the industry moved out, as those middle class jobs went.
Yep. Left into poverty, drugs, desperation, bad stuff. But it just seems to me that the Trump team, they just shoot from the hip from day to day. They want public relations victories. They always want a public relations win. But I don't see okay, this is the direction we're going. We're going to do this, and this is how it's going to work. It's like, let's quick get a win. Let's get a PR victory over here. Let's pound somebody. Oh, we're going to pound on this. And let me ask you this. What do you think about this? We're going to give Russia 10 days, which of course everybody, and at the end of 10 days, we're going to give them the Lindsey Graham treatment. That sounds like madness.
No, it is. In fact, I don't know if you've seen the latest exchange of social media between Donald Trump and Dmitry Medvedev, the former the former president of Russia, the current sort of the director, vice president, chair of their National Security Council. Trump is just threatening Russia, and Medvedev basically responded by saying, "Hey, don't forget the dead hand." Now, what's the dead hand? Excuse me. The dead hand is that if there's a decapitation strike on Russia, that they've set in place sort of a command that nuclear weapons will be launched at the United States. So that's where we're at now. I'm the president of peace, and I want a Nobel Peace Prize. Instead, he's turning out just to be batshit crazy, and these just grossly irresponsible remarks. Instead of, and because he thinks he's going to bully Russia into a surrender. Sorry, Russia is going. They're winning this war. They're going to continue winning the war, because ultimately they're going to defeat NATO, and NATO is going to be the big loser here, because Ukraine is a proxy army for NATO. And once Ukraine is defeated, and they've exposed that none of the NATO weapons could turn the battlefield around for them, and candidly, they don't have enough troops in Germany, France, and England combined that could even come in and make a difference in this war. So they're going to head it for it's going to the defeat of Ukraine, I think, will force a crisis in NATO that will, I think, ultimately end to its dissolution, which candidly will then solve Russia's security concerns.
Yeah, it for what it barely. I mean, it supposedly exists today, but on paper. So here's something else you have. China's in your article once again on sonar21.com is Trump's tariff tirade a Pyrrhic victory. I'd recommend you go check that out. China's reliance on exports. That's an important graph there.
Yeah, yeah. So they used to send a lot more to the United States. Now, not so much. Actually their trade is booming in Asia, in the ASEAN countries, Vietnam, Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, to a lesser extent down in Australia. But the point is, those they represent about 700 million. The area outside of China in the ASEAN countries, they represent about 700 million people. Well, that's 2 times the size of the U.S. market, and more and more of those countries are beginning to prosper, beginning to develop a solid middle class. So that's why China was actually able to pivot pretty quickly and say, okay, the U.S. doesn't want to buy this stuff, fine, we'll go sell elsewhere. Well, that's affecting people here in the States. And my son just ran, it's anecdotal evidence, but I think it's a evident symptom or example of the problem. His iPad crapped out on him 4 weeks ago. So, went back to the T-Mobile store and said, okay, here, look to do a trade-in, whatever. They said, okay, we'll get you a new one. He finally got it yesterday, 4 weeks later, because he didn't have them in stock. And they said, hey, listen, we can't give you one that's like, he had one of the full-size ones. They said, we can give you one that's like the 2/3 size because we don't have any of the bigger ones in stock. So he said, oh, okay. He needed it for his work. But so we're starting to see some of these supply chain disruptions already connected to this. And then here's Trump wanting to put tariffs on India. India and China between them produce probably most of the smartphones and computers in the world. Yeah, let's shut them off. That won't affect us at all. God, I mean,
well, the other thing too is there's a recklessness to it. We were told that Donald Trump was doing this stuff for something to do with economics, that he believed that tariffs was going to do something that help us economically. I can agree with you. I can disagree with you. But okay, that's your plan. That's your plan. I might think it's a bad move, but you're the president. You won. You got an economic plan. I got to accept that. Fine. Let's see how it works out. We've tried economic plans before that didn't work. So let's see what happens. That's what everybody has to deal with. But then it becomes, oh yeah, you're over there, and I don't like the prosecution of Bolsonaro. I'm giving you an extra amount of percent.
Yeah.
Oh, you're doing business with a country, and I don't like them. Oh, you said something that I don't like, and it becomes this personal guy who's at his own whims. You insulted me. I don't like what you said. I don't like what you're doing to some guy. Brazil's a sovereign nation.
Yeah.
If you may or may not like who they're prosecuting. They may or may not like who we're prosecuting. They may not be happy that we're grabbing people for protesting and throwing them out of the country for protesting Israel. But what you told us was an economic tool to bring jobs back and all that stuff, notwithstanding whether it will or not. And now it's just a guy sit around. Yeah, I don't like him. He gets one. You get one. Oh, you're getting smart with me? Tariffs for you. What the hell? Anyway,
yeah, well, he's using it as sanctions, and it doesn't. You're right; it's completely divorced from economic reality. Like sanctioning Brazil when we had to have a trade surplus with Brazil. Okay, it's like, oh, wait a second. It's one thing if you're running a trade deficit, because if you're running a trade deficit, it means they're not buying as much of your stuff as you are buying of their stuff. So you're buying more of their stuff, and they're not buying much of your stuff. It's just the opposite. Brazil was buying more of our stuff, and we're still going to sanction them. And they're going, no, wait a second. You're not, it would be one thing if the United States had a monopoly on the products that we were exporting. If there's nobody else that had those, but we're not in that game anymore. They can find, eggs somewhere else if they want. So Trump has really created a problem. And, the disconnect on the economy is because you hear Trump regularly complaining about Jerome Powell at the Fed. He's not cutting interest rates. Well, why does he need to cut interest rates if the economy is doing so good? Because the only reason you want to cut rates is if the economy's in stagnation or recession. So which is it? He's telling us we've got the biggest economy, we're growing, we're the greatest. Fine, then leave the interest rates alone. Because if inflation's come down a little bit, right? Yeah. Then you don't need to cut more interest rates, because you cut the interest rate, then that's going to have a stimulative effect on the economy, and that's going to probably incite more inflation. So make up your mind. What is it? We're doing great, or we're not doing so great? And the debt, that's what's hanging over our head. When that bubble explodes finally, we're going to get ripped with hyperinflation in this country, and it's going to have a very devastating effect.
Yeah, I think people are unhappy. And a big part of it is, whether a person agrees with the policies of a president or not. The president runs. He tells people what they're going to do. They can make a decision. The majority of the people picked it. At that point, move forward. But Donald Trump, he's just completely 180ing. Yeah, I didn't say that. Never mind. I'm not going to do it. He's doing this business. Let me add this. India. You're putting 25% on India. I'm not sure why. I guess because they're in BRICS. Anybody in BRICS gets an extra 10%. But additionally, you got these huge sanctions on Iran. India has that huge port they're building in Iran, a gigantic port. So India is investing in Iran, which they got a right to invest any damn where they please, right? So now I guess they're going to get sanctioned or something, or told they got to lose all that money. And according to Trump, within the next 4, 5, 6 days, another 100%. And he's kind of painted in a corner.
Yeah.
Because he's told 100% for everybody. If he doesn't, which I don't feel that he can do that. If China at some point is just going to say, we're walking away from this for good, and we're not going to negotiate. And India, you're going to lose China and India? I'm just aghast at what this whole, especially this last week, the old 10-day stuff.
Yeah, let's say we lived in the middle of Kansas, like at Leavenworth, and I had the only grocery store in town. Well, guess what? You're going to have to pay the price that I tell you, because you don't have much choice. So you can take a 4-hour drive maybe to go buy some food, but that becomes too costly. Now, what happens though if a couple of other stores open up? Well, all of a sudden I can't dictate that price. So it's going to give you more leverage. Well, that's exactly what's happened. Trump thinks he's the only store in town, and that he can set the price and he can tell everybody else, you got to eat here or screw off. And doesn't realize that particularly BRICS now is a real thing. And these continued threats and coercive actions by Trump are actually accelerating the development of BRICS. Countries, even Brazil, even Brazil was a founding member, but Brazil wasn't really hurrying along to be a part of it. Now, with the attack on Lula, because of what's going on there domestically with Bolsonaro, all of a sudden Brazil, it's actually united all the Brazilians against the United States. I think even Bolsonaro supporters were like, who the hell are these gringos interfering in our country? So this is, despite the sort of the good news spin that's coming out of the White House right now about, this is such a great deal, we're doing so good. Remember Trump in February? Countries are lining up to kiss my ass. No, they're not. Trump's actually, he's having to do a lot of ass kissing to try to get some of these deals done. And even then, as you pointed out earlier,
it looks good on paper, but when you get down to the details, it doesn't actually pan out.
No. What do you think happens at the end of his 10-day deadline thing? What is he able to do? I don't say he can do 100% tariffs. That would be economic suicide.
Well, yeah, go ahead and do 100% tariffs. It's not going to affect Russia because the United States has virtually no trade with Russia now. And despite that, Russia's economy grew last year. It's slowed. The growth has slowed down this year pretty significantly because of inflation. They took measures to combat inflation. So they jacked up the interest rates to like 21%, and they just announced the cut yesterday of going down to 18%. So they're starting to bring it down. They got inflation under control. But so we have no economic leverage over Russia. China and India have made it very, very clear. We're going to keep buying oil from Russia because it's cheaper than what we can get from you. And they got the liquid natural gas as well. So, Trump's he's going to get to the 10-day deadline and he's going to have to throw a fit. And, unfortunately, he's not the type to come out and say, well, I was wrong and I'm sorry. No, he'll just double down. He'll figure out a way to double down on stupid. But these other countries, they're looking at the United States as you would look at that angry neighbor that is always, always trying to pick a fight with you. And you finally just said, I'm going to put up a big fence and I don't even want to see you. You stay on your side of the fence. We'll stay on our side. Have a nice day. That's what I think where we're headed. The United States is isolating itself at a time when you'd think you'd want to have more friends. It's the Europeans aren't lining up going, oh, damn, we love that Donald Trump. Isn't he the man? Isn't this great? No, they're getting angry at Trump for how he's, abusing them. Canada is again getting threatened. Yeah, just yesterday we said we're cut off. We're gonna cut off trade with Canada. Oh yeah, this policy makes so much sense. Previously, our three big trading partners were Canada, Mexico, and China. And now we're saying, oh, screw all of you. It's just.
And why? Well, because they're going to recognize Palestine. But that's a whole nother story. But
yeah.
Really? So again, you're going to wreck our country over Israel? I think people are getting kind of sick of that, saying, what? You ran and said America first, and we got to look out for America. We got to look out for our own people first, blah, blah, blah. And now you're literally saying, we'll wreck our country, number one, over, he told us, Joe Biden, what Biden did with Ukraine, that was stupid. He shouldn't have started the war. He said these neocons and these warmongers got to be stopped out of Trump's mouth.
Yeah.
And now here's what you're saying. I'm going to wreck our economy. Destroy it, wipe it out. What? Over this so-called stupid war that Joe Biden started. It's his war. It's not mine. I would end it if I could. It's hard to end. He said that, which was true. But I'm going to wreck our economy over that. And I'm going to wreck our economy over Israel because people choose to recognize Palestine. So you couldn't get any further from America first. You couldn't get any further over why your base voted for you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think we're actually at sort of a watershed moment because the announcement with Macron, then Starmer, and now the Canadians all saying, "Hey, we're gonna recognize Palestine as a nation." I think it was Sweden that was calling upon the other Europeans to halt exports to Israel, so to start using economic pressure on Israel. I noticed that the public opinion polling in the United States shows right now, even among Republicans, it's like 32% support for Israel. Tucker Carlson, he's done really two sort of back-to-back shows. He had John Mearsheimer on yesterday, and Mearsheimer went chapter and verse on really the origin of the conflict, how bad Israel is. I mean, it was describing really the problems with the Zionist project. So, of course,
Tucker's going to get attacked by all these pro-Zionist elements. But then today, Tucker is broadcasting a retired Army lieutenant colonel. Guy looks, he still looks young. Aguilar is his name, who was he was on a mission to distribute aid in Gaza, and he's describing the war crimes that he witnessed. So this is just going to enrage the Zionists. But the truth is, they're a bunch of murderous thugs. So we're starting to see that turn. And Netanyahu, I think he's starting to get more pressure from Putin. That Putin is recognized that Netanyahu has been as much of a sponsor of Ukraine's violence against Russia as the United States. So this is we may be seeing hopefully a light at this end of this dark tunnel of the genocide against the Palestinians.
It's crazy. And Trump's, and here's the next thing. He's threatening Iran again. Now, okay, the last go around with Iran, they pummeled the crap out of Israel. It was pretty clear that if that had went on for another week or two, that the entire U.S. and really everybody would have been out of, there would have been completely out of air defense missiles, and probably wouldn't have been able to restock them for literally years, which means we only got a couple weeks of air defense missiles anyway. That's what that really means. But the last go round, you almost got exhausted of air defense missiles. And Trump's threatening them again. Well, we might have to bomb them again. Meanwhile, Iran's, working with Russia and China. We don't know what they're doing, but I would be willing to bet they are, upping their air defense capabilities. And the last time you had a 12-hour jump on them, you ain't going to have a 12-hour jump if you attack them again on them.
Yeah,
You're going to start off, and they will be prepared from day one. So he's threatening them again. He's even threatening them again. And if you look at it, the U.S. really, at this point, doesn't have the capacity to engage in a high-intensity war, to sustain a high-intensity war for more than a week or so, if that.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. The THAAD. So we basically, our two key air defense systems are Patriot missiles and the THAAD, the Terminal High Altitude Air Defense System. We burned through 25% of our total inventory in those 12 days. And we didn't stop. We didn't shoot down most of the missiles. That's number one. Each of those missiles cost $13 million. So if you're going to make 100 of them, well, it's going to be what, 1.3 billion. The Patriot, and we only make 50 of them a year. Okay. So, if you go through, if you shot about 50 off in those 12 days, you're going through the stores that you had built up, and all of a sudden you're down. So it's going to take you a while to reboot that. Then the Patriot, similarly, the Lockheed Martin only makes between 550 and 700 a year of the PAC-3, the missile, and they do that to the tune of $7 million a piece. So we've got these extraordinarily expensive missile systems that we can't produce in volume. And as you correctly noted, we can't replace. So, but we would go pick a fight with Iran. Yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah, but as Iran, it says we don't want to fight, but we're going to pick a fight with them. We might have to go back and bomb. What do you think they're going to do? You think they're just going to sit around and say, oh, well, they got bombed? No, it is absurd to look at our so-called ally. I think our political system, our political system at this point is unstable. Mm-hmm. I looked at some numbers. The Democrats, they just got the lowest numbers of all. I mean, they're pathetic. They were already pathetic. I mean, about all they got is the woke stuff, and nobody. That's like they live off the woke stuff, and nobody's really, into that. And they don't even know how to react. They, the whole Israel Zionist stuff. You look at the Democrats, they're like, They don't know what to say. Their masters that pay them and that keep them in office are all saying, their sponsors are all saying, hey, you guys better not say anything. Their base, I think like 8% or something of their base favorite. Their disaster. Trump, meanwhile, a lot of Republicans are not in favor of that. They don't want another war. They want him to get the hell out of Ukraine, like he said. They don't want another war with Iran and this whole Epstein stuff. People are like, come on, at least just say, hey, you know what, guys? I thought I could, but I couldn't. You know what? I'd respect them. If Trump said, listen, on the Epstein thing, I just can't do it, guys. I can't say anything else, but I promised I would. I can't do it. I'd say, you know what? I expect that. That's the truth. But don't tell me they don't exist.
Yeah. No, they keep changing their strategy. Now I think they went with that deputy attorney general who went and for the first time debriefed her. Got her to basically do a deposition and start naming names and such. First time ever, huh? So this is. I think your broader point about this, though, is that the growing alienation of Americans with both political parties. And so Trump's going to become more and more unpopular, but that doesn't translate into, oh my God, I love the Democrats, because they're just the people are going to say they're as batshit crazy as that. There's this one commentator. I was reading some of the comments at the Tucker Carlson video with John Mearsheimer. And this one woman wrote, she says, I'm a black woman in my 60s, and I never thought I would be watching and liking Tucker Carlson. But regardless, we may have some differences on things, but I appreciate the fact that you're coming at this honestly and taking on these issues and asking legitimate questions. So right there, that's where, shows like yours and others, they create a dialogue that you can't have in these hyper partisan environments. I'm done registering with any political party, and I'm done with donating money to any political party. Done, because it's all we're doing is feeding the sickness. And Trump, unfortunately, is becoming just another symptom of that disease.
He's Obama to me. 2008, Obama said all this great stuff. I voted for him. Oh boy, you're going to do something different and hope in jail. He sounded great. He was a sharp guy. He said all the right things. When he got in office, he was just another intelligence war puppet guy doing the same old stuff, right? He sounded great. Then he got in office and he was just, he puts all of the Wall Street people in and off he goes for the same old thing, right? And I feel the same way about Trump. 2000 and when he was running this time, especially, he sounded great. I'm going to stop he literally said, the neocons have to be stopped. We're throwing them out of office. The warmongers, they're out of here. Victoria Nuland. I'm thinking, wow, we're going to get peace with the rest. And I'm going to talk with Xi Jinping and we're going to bring peace to the world. I'm going to be the peace person. I'm like, that sounds okay to me.
Right.
I think it was Obama. Got in. Within weeks, he's attacking the Houthis. Within months, he's blowing up something in Iran. And even that was a fake PR stunt.
Yeah, killing an American citizen overseas with his son. You remember when Obama hit the
yes,
the one, again, he's an American citizen. No due process there, man.
But the Israelis just beat an American citizen to death recently. Like some settlers or something. The guy was an American citizen, like at home or on the streets, and they're just, marauding around as they tend to, beating people up and burning things. And some guy's an American citizen, they beat the hell out of him and killed him, he died. And I'm like, one thing I knew, you guys would care less. You and I, right now, if we decided to do a video in downtown Tel Aviv and the IDF walked up and beat us both to death, Trump, the whole group wouldn't say wouldn't mumble a word.
Yeah, and it's coming as a revelation to a lot of people. The Christian Zionists in particular, that Israel's anti-Christian attitude and attacks on Christians has been going on for 70 years, and now they're sort of like, Really? I thought you liked us because we like you. Yeah, forget about that.
They hate everybody and they bomb everybody, and we're paying for it. And that's the other part of it. I'm sick of paying for it. I mean, we just go so far, Larry, that the level of unhappiness, I don't know how Donald Trump can sustain this for 4 years when people are pissed about everything. And if you keep screwing around with these tariffs and sanctions and things like this, at some point, it's going to hit us really hard. One of these countries, like for instance, China, if we, I feel like this, if we hit China with 100% tariffs after all of this stuff, which I doubt if we will, but let's just say we hit them with some big tariffs, at some point they're going to walk away from the table and they're going to say, we're not coming back. And what happens when Detroit, all of everything closes down, every car place closes down, all this stuff that we make, everything closes down because we don't have rare earths, we don't have all that stuff. And we call them back, okay, we'd like to talk again. And they say, nah, we've done this too many times. Go on, find it somewhere else.
Yeah. No, it is. Trump, I said, Trump's bullying is becoming just disconnected from reality. So it's one thing to try to bully a country that is your declared enemy. But man, when you're doing that same thing to your friends, your alleged friends, I mean, if you had a friend that acted towards you like Trump is acting towards these countries, you wouldn't have him as a friend. You wouldn't be hanging out, wouldn't be going out to dinner. You know, Trump's like that guy who wants to be your friend, but he makes you pay for his dinner and makes you go where he wants to eat, regardless of what you want. Yeah, at some point you say, hey, listen, lose my phone number. We're not having a relationship anymore. That's where we're headed with these countries, in contrast to Trump's claim that they're lining up to smooch his behind. They're going on and finding other more productive relationships. They find with Russia, you don't get this kind of drama. You know, it's all matter of fact, business, respectful. You don't get the drama with Trump. Oh my God, it's a circus.
Well, you know, Trump said something about, or was it von der Leyen said something about, okay, we've got this deal with Trump and with the U.S. and we have stability. Stability with Donald Trump,
right.
That'll last an hour. Whatever deal they made with him, if they do something he doesn't like a week from now, then there's no stability. That's absurd. Let me ask you this: I follow as best I can the daily towns that fall in Ukraine that I can't pronounce. I can just keep saying this every day. Another town that I can't pronounce has fallen. I can't pronounce it, but I go on Telegram and there's some Russian guys with a flag in the middle of the town.
Yeah.
In the ground. They're dragging some Ukrainian bodies around or something like that. And they're saying, all right, we've now taken Petrovsk or one of these kind of towns. Chasov Yar. You know, that can only go on but so long until you lose the war.
Yeah.
If they're sticking, ask the Germans about they take 1,850 towns or something before they ended up. Sooner or later, they end up in Berlin or Kiev in this instance. I don't see how this unstable proxy army can continue. They're getting pummeled. Yeah. And these clowns are pretending like, yes, they're standing up to Russia. No, they're not.
Well, we operate in the West. The Trump administration, but the same applied to the Biden administration, with an intelligence community that's lying. Whether they're willfully lying or just lying because they're too damn lazy to get off their ass and do some actual work, I don't know. But let me give you the prime example. Cy Hirsch recently, he published on his Substack an article that was talking about how bad, how many casualties the Russians are taking. And this official from the intelligence community, according to Cy, told Cy it was 2 million. 2 million Russians. And so I told Cy, Cy's an old friend. I said, Cy, that's not true. He said, oh, no, he's reliable. And so that's why I wrote an article the other day laying out, saying, okay, here's the evidence for the Russians of, the
their army was at the start of the special military operation, the total ground forces was, I think, 300,000. And then that was February of 2022. Come September of 2022, they mobilized another 300,000 reservists. Okay, so let's just add 3 into that, 600,000. Then in November and December, they have new conscripts, people that are get a draft notice. They put another 120,000 in. So at the end of the year, it got 720,000. But that goes with the assumption that nobody's died, nobody's been injured, nobody's deserted, or nobody's left because their contractor's up or tour of duty. Then we go to 2023. Well, the Russians recruited on average 35,000 people a month. And by the end of the year, they had about additional 400,000 conscripts and contract soldiers. Ditto for the same thing in 2024 and similar in 2025. Now, why I bring that up is if you say that there are 2 million casualties after 41 months, that means 48,000, almost 49,000 a month are being taken out of action. So if you're only recruiting 35 to 40,000 a month, but you're losing 50,000 a month, just do the math. You're going down. You're not going to have enough soldiers to continue the fight unless you recruit 80,000. But there is zero evidence that Russia was ever recruiting, doing conscripts and contract soldiers at a rate greater than 40,000 a month. There's absolutely no evidence of that whatsoever. And so, but here's the intelligence community putting out this nonsense, and Trump's repeating it. Yeah, Russia's suffering. Oh, they're suffering terribly. No, they're not. That's one of the reasons they're able to. They are preserving their ground forces. They're in fact, like the Battle of Chasiv Yar, they just assigned that to one division, one group of guys of about 15, 20,000, and said, okay, this is yours. Work on it. And they worked all the way at it. They weren't reinforced. They got supplies, or they had replacements come in, but they took their time and they finally wore them down and took control of the territory. Russia is quite content to move at that kind of pace because they're able to attrit. It's like sucking the life out of Ukraine, and then in the process sucking the resources out of NATO and the United States.
Yeah, I've been saying, a lot of them have been saying they're demilitarizing NATO. They're not just demilitarizing Ukraine. We're throwing everything in there. My understanding is a couple of days ago, one of these new Patriot missiles came and they unloaded off the airplane. They put it in a warehouse, and the Russians sent in a couple missiles and blew it up. So the Russians are just like, well, you might as well send more stuff in here so we can address it and we won't have to deal with it later. The other thing is this: Europe. That's a basket case. Merz is under 20%. Macron's under 20%. Starmer, I don't even know what to say about this guy. He is a clown. I think Corbyn and somebody else started some new party, and like 500,000 people signed up the first day. Mickey Mouse could start a party in Europe, and any of these and 500,000 people would sign up the first day. People are looking for anything other than these lunatics they have. Right.
Yeah, well, no, it's remarkable that Starmer, the Labor Party had, swept to a pretty impressive win, at least on paper. Now there were some problems behind it, but that was a little over a year and a half ago. Now, he would have trouble selling a bottle of water to somebody who was thirsty. They're just not buying from him. So you've got really a collective of very, very weak people across Europe, and the weaker they are, the more belligerent they become, vis-a-vis Russia. Instead of someone's waking up and saying, you know what? Why do we need to have Russia as an enemy? Because Russia, it's not like Russia was out as it was during the Soviet era claiming, hey, communism is a superior system to capitalism, and we're going to do everything that we can do to promote communism. So there was that ideological battle during the Cold War. Okay, naturally, I could understand why countries say, hey, we don't want to have anything to do with you on that basis. But that's not Russia. Russia is they're nationalists, they're Christian, and say, hey, we'll get along, but they don't come in to tell you how you need to run your country. They'll let you make your own decisions. And boy, we can't stand that. Can't have that. That's a threat to this new world economic order we want to impose. So,
let me ask you this: I got about 10 minutes later. Some new info came out, and stuff starting to come out on Russiagate, and I'll tell you why it's important. I shared some of that with you today. I know you said you got a little chance. I was looking over this stuff, and I think it's just starting to trickle out. What for people who don't know, it had to do. It was newly. Where is it? Newly declassified appendix to the Durham report sheds additional light on the Clinton campaign, and you look at it. There's a lot of things we could get into it, but here's one thing that's obvious. Man, the FBI is crooked. Yeah. The FBI is not a little bit crooked. The FBI is a absolute criminal, crooked organization.
Yeah, well, when I started paying attention to Russiagate, it was shortly after the DNC, the alleged theft of the DNC emails by the Russians, which wasn't the case at all. But over the years, discovered that in September of 2015, even before Donald Trump had been identified as the most likely candidate to win the Republican nomination, the FBI tried to entrap Trump using Russia as a pretext. And we know this from the Mueller. Actually, Mueller reported on this. I don't think he intended to reveal that it was an FBI trap. He claimed that he just claimed that Trump was trying to set up a real estate deal in Moscow in September of 2015 to build a Trump Tower. Well, the guy that was bringing this idea to Trump, and actually he didn't bring it directly to Trump, he brought it to his old friend, Michael Cohen. This guy's name was Felix Sater. Felix Sater, born in Russia, came to the United States, grew up he was either in the Bronx or Brooklyn, wherever Michael Cohen grew up. So he and Cohen were boyhood friends. But more important than that, in 1999, Felix Sater was signed up as an FBI confidential human source. He had got into a bar fight, severely injured somebody. They cut him a plea deal. He became a cooperating human source. He also did some work for the CIA with respect to trying to go after Osama bin Laden's phones. And this was in 2000 and early 2001. So anyway, he is the first one that gets connected with Donald Trump in like 2006. They're in the same building, and Felix Sater's doing real estate deals. But all this time, he's still an FBI informant. Then he brings in Michael Cohen, introduces Michael Cohen as a lawyer that Trump starts using. And then out of the blue, 2015 goes in to try to, hey, why don't you go build this Trump Tower in Moscow? And the Trump folks fortunately said, no, we're not interested. But the FBI had started then, and it only accelerated into 2016. And they were coordinating it with the CIA. People were wanting to think that this FBI was doing its thing and CIA doing its thing, and no, they were locked solid together on this.
Well, and we find that in one of the things in the Durham, and that was one would look, for instance, the CIA would look at something. For instance, they had a bunch of supposedly hacked emails from the Clinton people, oddly enough, interestingly enough, not surprisingly, who were communicating with the people at the Soros Open Society Foundation. But so there's all these emails. The CIA looks at them and says, I think they're valid. Yeah, they're not made up by anybody. They're not. The Russians have these look like they're good. They look valid. Everything looks good. The FBI looks at them, and even though the CIA said, yeah, they're good, the FBI fails to look into it and basically says, oh yeah, that's Russian interference or something like that.
Yeah.
We don't need to look into that. Emails where they said that Loretta Lynch, the AG, the emails are out now. The AG was telling the Clinton campaign what was going on in an FBI investigation against Hillary over the emails.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, I remember that July 4th and
Phoenix, the tarmac.
2016. Well, in 2016, where Comey comes out and says, hey, there's no there, so shouldn't be indicted. Let me ask you a question based upon your police experience. Seth Rich, the DNC staffer who was allegedly killed, took 2 gunshot wounds, that died from them in a failed robbery in DC. Why would the FBI's counterintelligence unit, headed by Peter Strzok, be involved in what was allegedly a municipal crime, a crime that had nothing to do with international affairs?
They would not.
But they were.
They would not. And I worked with the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force. I worked for the governor's office in the state of Maryland. I was appointed by the governor to work with them on this kind of stuff and terrorism and all of that. And specifically, we discussed, I had to write a manual at one point, never actually finished the manual, but the manual was going to be about when something happens, what do we do versus what is the sea, if it's on the Chesapeake Bay, what is the terrorism on the Chesapeake Bay? What is the FBI in charge of? What is the Coast Guard in charge of? What are we? So it was that delineation of duties, right?
Yeah.
And in that instance, no, they don't have a part in that. But add this, why would they come in? So you just got a guy shot in the back. He's laying in the street. That happens in cities. It's a terrible thing. That happens. The FBI comes in. They take his phones. They take his laptop. They take all of his electronics. And then for a year, they swear they don't have them.
Yeah.
Have them. And to this day, they're fighting not to allow those out.
Yeah. I've been working with Ty Clevenger on that for, oh my God, for 6-7 years. Ever since his main client, Ed Battowski, was sued by the family of Seth Rich. But the point is, there's still so much dirt to come out of this. I think you're just seeing the top of the iceberg, because there's a lot of dirty ice below the waterline.
Well, absolutely. I mean, and I don't know if you remember this. I've worked on some investigation on this. Do you remember a scandal? This guy named Imran Awan.
Yes.
That. And what did Imran Awan do? He was the DNC's IT guy.
Yeah.
But he also had all of the passwords for Wasserman Schultz. He had all of the info he was able to go up to Capitol Hill to the Democrats to get into all of their computers. And I forgot which law enforcement agency. Somebody said, we want this server. They asked him for a server and the server disappeared.
Well, he was an FBI confidential human source. Did you know that?
Makes sense to me.
However, he was also ISI, Pakistan Intelligence Service asset. So I had a friend who was a Pakistani. I helped him get his green card, but he's a journalist. And so after all of this transpired, he went back to Pakistan and confirmed that Hawan was a Pakistani asset. I think that's actually who killed Seth Rich.
It's interesting. I do too. Yeah. I said that to Ray McGovern. I think 2 things about him. Number one, he was the DNC's IT guy, right? Think about this. And I know a bit about computers, self-learned, but a good bit. And here's what I know. There's something called a server log. And in the server log will tell you everything that happened.
Mm-hmm.
So when at some point the DNC realized, somebody's taken our stuff and got it to WikiLeaks, right? Probably because NSA told them, but whatever. They would say to one of their other IT guys, I want you to go in the server log and look and see who stole it, because that server log is going to give you everything.
Absolutely.
When it was taken, what was taken.
Yeah.
Here's what I think. That Imran Awan was the guy that they went to him and said, hey, guy, we need to know who did it. It was Seth Rich. We need to clean this mess up. I got it covered. That's what it seems. He would be the guy that they would go to and say, we want to know who did it. Now, who would they go to? They would go to a guy who they trust ain't going to tell nobody because he does the wet work. You know what I mean?
Yeah. In fact, the sequence of events is, here's Seth Rich. Seth Rich gets killed. Well, the emails are taken off of the server on May 26th. And Bill Binney established through the metadata. Bill and I wrote the first paper about this.
Good. Yeah.
And Bill Binney, though, established that it was impossible that this could have been uploaded. Just the upload speeds over the internet didn't match up with what was actually showing in the metadata. So they disappeared on May 26th. CIA, whether independently or through GCHQ or with NSA, it was discovered that Seth Rich was in contact with WikiLeaks and what was the transaction that was going down. That's why you didn't get CrowdStrike, even though they claimed they started the investigation in early May. They didn't shut down the server. They didn't shut it off until June 10th. So just figure that time frame for May 26th. So you got five more days in May, and then another 10 days in June. That's 2 weeks. In that 2 week period, what happened? I believe that what took place was that the CIA, using Vault 7 material, created this Guccifer 2.0.
Yes, they did.
To claim that it was the Russian job. And in fact, to make sure people knew it was Russian, in the metadata of those Guccifer messages, they put the name Felix Dzerzhinsky, who was the first head of the Cheka up there. I mean, it was so amateurish. But
it really was.
So then in July, Seth Rich gets killed. Well, why would the Pakistanis want to kill him? Well, the Pakistanis are worried that, oh my God, now that Julian Assange might have these emails, we need to find out what Seth Rich took. And because it's going to potentially expose Awan. Well, it ended up, because in August, that's when the whole house came crashing down on him. Because I spoke to the Inspector General of the House of Representatives back then. It was a woman, and she was all over this, and she was getting zero cooperation from the FBI, zero. So the FBI, I mean, that's why I believe that explains why Peter Strzok from the counterintelligence shop at the main headquarters was being communicated with regularly by the Washington field office and their involvement in the investigation of Seth Rich, which was not a federal crime. It wasn't a federal crime. It was a local crime. It was a homicide, allegedly. But so we've got like I said, there is a lot of nefarious going on here.
Yeah, and I think it was maybe they killed him for the WikiLeaks, but I've suspected for a long time that it had to do with Awan, and that, hey, you're right. They went and they got his electronics and everything else because they were probably afraid he's got the goods on Awan and whatever's going on.
Right. No, I agree with you. That's
what he got killed over.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, that was. I smelled the rat early. And did you read the plea deal they made with Imran Awan?
I read it at the time. I don't recall. I just remember it was.
Here's something interesting. We're just about to the end, but I'll tell you about the plea deal because I read it. Yeah, I was an investigator. I did this stuff, right? I read the plea deal. Here's what the interesting thing about that plea deal was, because I've been involved in plea deals. What they got him for, this was crazy. He did all of this stuff. He was accused of stealing servers, stealing information off of government computers, but they didn't charge him with any of that. What they charged him with was they said he was trying to buy a house.
Yeah, mortgage fraud, wasn't it?
And his wife wrote that they owned a house when in fact they were only renting it. That's what they charged him with. That's bull crap.
Yeah.
But they wrote a plea deal for that. And in the plea deal, Now, remember, he's charged with mortgage fraud. In the plea deal, they write, we investigated him for stealing a server, hacking into computers, getting rid, all of the things that he actually did. In the plea deal, they say, we investigated him for all of this stuff, and we found out that he didn't do it. Now, why in the hell would they charge me with, I don't know, stealing a bicycle and then write a plea deal that says Garland didn't commit murder, rape, sodomy, larceny, arson, burglary, mayhem? Yeah, that has nothing to do with this. So they wrote him a plea deal that basically said all of the actual things that he did. We investigated him for that. And we found, and how often, you've been around this federal law enforcement, how the hell often does the FBI charge some random person that they go read all of the documentations when people buy houses and say, ooh, right there, you checked off that you own when you really rent, we're going to charge you for that. Never.
Yeah. I mean, this was clearly, you know, I think the FBI discovered that Awan was a double agent, that he had been tricking them all along. And they didn't want to have to come out and admit that they had been made fools of, that, you know, he was running circles around them. But it clearly was a Pakistani intelligence operation, you know, keeping track of what the members of Congress are doing, looking for pressure points, you know, just doing what any decent intelligence service would try to do. But I think they, like you said, Seth Rich got killed because they wanted to shut him up, and so he couldn't say anything about Awan.
Which again gets back to what we look. They killed both Kennedys. I believe they killed Martin Luther King. The FBI, they killed a lot of people. They've rubbed out a whole, you know, what's the guy who figured out with the San Jose Mercury News?
Oh yeah, Gary Webb.
The top couple of bullets in the back of his head. Franco. I mean, you could go. These people killed a lot of people, and so it's nothing. It's not strange to believe that, nothing weird to believe that they rubbed out Seth Rich and then the FBI covered it up. Larry, thanks a lot. Everybody, don't forget, it's very, very important that you go to Larry's website, and it is sonar21.com. And before we go, I will show everybody once again. Okay, sonar21.com. This is it right here. It's a great website. Go to it all the time. And don't forget, you can click right here and you can subscribe, put your email address and everything. And of course, there's options for PayPal, PayShoot, Patreon, and Buy Me a Coffee. And don't forget, look, you know, everybody that does this, Larry, everybody else who's doing this, you know, we just, whatever donations that people help us with keeps us going. It doesn't always keep us going, but it helps to, you know, put a little food on the table. So thanks a lot, everybody. Follow Larry on all the social media, support Sonar 21, and most importantly, share this on all your social media platforms. Thanks a lot.